वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः So, we saw from the morning class that Arjuna had two different questions. One he describes as I am dharma sammuda chetaha, which means that I am confused about what should I do in this situation, which we describe as situational problem. And the second thing is he is asking for yat shreyas syat nishchitam rupitarme. So give me that knowledge which will give me freedom, which is what the second question, and that is about the fundamental human problem of what gives you that freedom from the sense of inadequacy and lack. So therefore, now Lord Krishna has to answer both the questions. One is the fundamental problem, the other one is the situational problem. So the teaching starts. And what do you think he will answer first? Situational problem or fundamental problem?
Situation.
He's looking, he's very wise. Let's see what the verse is. Okay, he answers fundamental problem first. Yeah, and then he comes back to situation. So let's see what the answer is. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Ashocyananvashocastvam Prajnavadamscha bhashase Gatasu nagatasumscha Nanushocanti panditaha. So he answers the fundamental problem first. And he answers, this is the first verse where the teaching begins. So chapter 2 verse 11 is the time now the teaching begins. And he says, Panditaha na anushochanti. What does it mean? The wise people, Pandita are wise people, and they have no sorrow. No sorrow for what? Gata suna agata sumscha. For people who are gone and people who are not yet gone. So this is something where, what was Arjuna's direct problem right now? It was about the war and killing his own people. So he uses, and that could be, destruction could be the worst, the kind of a decision that you have to face in life. And this is what we call symbolic for all other problems. So this is such a high level of problem, and if you don't have sorrow for this problem, then what we call in Sanskrit is kaimutika nyayaha. What does it mean? It means if this doesn't give you sorrow, then everything else will be piece of cake, right? So that is what is used. It's not only with reference to this situation, but if this situation which gives sorrow to anybody, if this doesn't give sorrow, then what to talk of anything else, right? Now, this, and therefore he says, now this is beautiful, the first verse, the first line of the verse is, therefore he says, Ashocyananvashocastvam. You're grieving for something which doesn't deserve to be grieved for, and at the same time, prajna vadamscha bhashase. You're speaking as though you're a wise person. So that is interesting. So it goes, you're grieving for something which doesn't deserve to be grieved for, but you're speaking like a wise person. But if you're a really wise person, then for people who are gone and people who are not gone, then there is no sorrow. This is a very complex statement. Now, one thing is very important to understand, and that is Lord Krishna is, please not giving you an advice. He is not telling you, if you are wise, this situation will not bring sorrow. So therefore, if you want to be wise, stop feeling sorrow. That is a destructive advice, because that necessarily leads to blocking of the emotion. You almost feel guilty for feeling things that are actually quite legitimate, right? So therefore, Lord, Gita is a book of teaching, it's not a book of advice. Lord Krishna is not asking you not to grieve, he is saying, Panditaha, if you are a Pandita, then there is no grief. So that means, Pandita means the person who knows. The person who knows the reality, he is talking about the vision of the person. Who knows the reality is a different vision. And if you are alive to that vision, then the emotions are in their place. So it's not telling you not to have emotions, it's asking you to what? Invest in the vision, which will make you see the realities clearly, in light of which the emotions will be in their place. So therefore he says, now Arjuna, can you call him a wise person? Because he is full of sorrow. So if this is the definition of wise person, that what? That person has no sorrow, then Arjuna falls in which category? A wise or unwise? Unwise, right? Because he has sorrow. Now, but he tells him, Prajna iva vadamscha bhashase. But you are speaking like a wise person. Why is he speaking like a wise person? Because the way he looked at the situation was very wise. And also the fact that from that situation he moved to fundamental human problem he could figure out, that is also wise. So that means you have two categories of people who see the reality and people who don't see the reality. But people who don't see reality, you can't put them in one box. Because Duryodhana also did not see the reality. Dhritarashtra also did not see the reality. Arjuna also did not see the reality. Can you put them all in one box? No, they are very different. Dhritarashtra's Mamaka was only his own sons. Arjuna's Mamaka was what? And not only the people that he loved, but all the soldiers and also all the future generations. So he was a person who was thinking much bigger than what this little narrowly defined self-interest. So that's why he says, you are speaking like a wise person, but you are not yet wise. So this also gives you an insight into who this teaching goes to. The teaching can only go to what? Somebody who doesn't yet know, who needs to know the reality. But the person, if you are like Duryodhana, it's not that the teaching is denied to you because you are disqualified. What does it mean? That your mind operates in a way that he was only thinking about how to get back and how to win the kingdom. That's as far as his mind went. And therefore, there was no question of what is a fundamental human. All this did not exist. Should I do this or should I not do it? So the person was operating from what we call his understanding of situation, which kept him there. So therefore, this gives us an insight into who does this teaching go to. The teaching goes to those who are discerning human beings. Because the discerning human beings actually ask for it, not because they are kind of, So therefore, here he says, in order for this teaching to come to you, there has to be what? The first qualification. And what is that qualification? That you need to have, there is a person who has, what in Mundaka Upanishad, there is a very beautiful description of this person who comes to this knowledge. And the description is Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan Brahmanaha Nirvedam Ayat. Observing the world, the person begins to understand that behind all my pursuits, what I am really searching for is fulfillment. That is a common thing. Whether I want to be a doctor or an engineer or an artist or a sports person, everybody is searching for fulfillment. And the minute you get this, what happens is we stay within the same paradigm, because what happens is, for example, if I want to get into the university that I want, it will give me some pleasure. If it didn't give me any pleasure, I will not stick to it. It does give me some pleasure, but it is not permanent. And because it is not permanent, then what happens is you want more of it. Or you want to expand, or you want to deepen the experience. And this is what keeps us engaged in that pursuit. So that means now that I got into the university, I want to do well. Now that I do well, then I want a job. So that means we keep moving from one thing to the other, and that keeps us engaged. Because you think, now that I got it, wow, I felt happy, but again you are then seeking, and again that you are seeking. So that means you are a seeker that remains constant. Fulfillment drops of fulfillments keep coming. And what we try to do is lengthen the experience of fulfillment and deepen the experience of fulfillment, and that keeps us going. Now, who is this person who comes to Vedanta? The person who understands the fact that no external situation can give me what I am searching for. Why? The world is set up in a way that you try to hold on to anything. How long? Neither the object is designed in a way that it undergoes a change, and there is no guarantee that it will be there with you tomorrow. And your desires also keep changing. As a kid you wanted marble, now you want a car, your desires also change. So in a changing world where the objects are changing and your preferences are changing, you are searching for lasting fulfillment by getting things. When will you finish? Never. Exactly. When you understand that, then you have to ask a question. And you have to ask, hey, so does it then mean I have to give up the search because I'll never find it? Or I can say, yes, maybe there is a solution, but the solution is not at the place where I'm searching. Two possibilities. So therefore, if you have to see for a search which is so fundamental, which is behind all your pursuits, which is fulfillment, and then imagine if you have come to the conclusion that I'll never find it, and it's not possible, seeing the nature of the world, how your life will be tomorrow. So that means that would be the disaster, right? So luckily, what Vedanta says is, there is solution, but not where you are searching. So where is then the solution? Excellent. So the solution is where the problem is. My teacher wrote a beautiful book. The solution is where the problem is. Where is what is the locus of problem? I am dissatisfied. So what is the locus where the solution has to take place? I So therefore, I need to reconsider what my understanding of I is. And I have to see whether I am seeing myself in a true light or not. So that means before you come to this conclusion, that person has to observe life. That person has to also have a certain sense of clarity with which one understands things. And this is what he says, you're like that. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, the fact that you have come to this point, but you're asking me these questions means you are already what? As though a wise person. But in order for you to be a real wise person, you need to know certain realities. And those realities are about the nature of I. So now, what is the vision of Pandita? What do Panditas know that Arjuna doesn't know about the nature of I? So the next verse, he is talking about the nature of I. Natvevaham jatu nasam natvamnete janatipaha nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamatav param. He starts with a very interesting thing, and he now wants to teach about the nature of Atma. So he starts by saying, there was never a time that I was not. Lord Krishna is talking, there was never a time that I was not. Then you may think that Lord Krishna is somebody very special, therefore he always existed. Then he immediately says, there was never a time that you were not. He tells Arjuna. Right? And then he says, there was never a time that all these people who are in front of you, they were not. And there is never a time that they are not going to be. That seems, from our understanding of who we are, that seems like what? A bizarre statement, right? Because all of us, we know what? I have a birth date. That I have existence maybe on this earth from, I don't know, 80, 100 years, if we are good, in good health and lucky. And there is going to be a time that I am not going to be there. This is a common knowledge of everyone. And Lord Krishna starts by saying, there was never a time that you were not, and there was never a time you will not be. So that definitely means what I understand as I is not what Lord Krishna is talking about as I. So then, what is it? So let's first, the way the teaching goes, it starts with what you think is I, and then what it has to be negated, and then we come to what Lord Krishna refers to as I. So, where is our I, which makes us conclude that we are here and we are mortals, that we are here only for a short time. We put our I where, which makes us conclude that where? Body, right? So that means it's a very common understanding that I am as good as the body. Now, the thing is, nobody actually says I am the body. Nobody actually says, yeah, I am this body. But we all behave. So if I ask you, who are you? Then when you say, I'm a male or a female, that answer implies that what your I is in the body, right? I'm short, I'm tall, I'm fair, I'm dark, right? And not only these are the facts, then those facts further get loaded. Blonde is beautiful, blue eyes is attractive. So the person who has dark eyes feels, I'm no good. So that means not only we make a mistake about what my nature is, but as a result of that mistake, we begin to suffer so many complexes. So in India, there is one thing, fair is beautiful. So that means everybody who's dark has a complex. And the cream that sells the most in India is what? Fair and Lovely. It's called Fair and Lovely cream. So therefore, so fair is lovely. So that means, and nowadays everybody wants to be like those stick models, who are like sticks. So everybody thinks they are fat. So therefore, not only we make a mistake, but as it's costing us a lot. It's not a simple mistake. The mistake actually leads to a lot of what? Self-conclusion. And as a result of the self-conclusion, self-inadequacy and complexes. So therefore, when Vedanta is making you see that you are not the body. And why are you not the body? Not because Vedanta says or Gita says it, because there is a logic. What is the logic? If I begin to see what the body is, what exactly, in fact, it's very interesting. Just tell me what the body is. Tell me, what is the body?
Earth, water.
Oh, wow, he's going into Vedanta. Okay, that's great. Now this body that, if I ask you, is hand the body? No. Leg the body? No. The eyes are the body? No. So let's take out each of these things which are not the body. Liver is not the body, kidney is not the body, blood is not the body. So that means body is made up of all non-bodies. So therefore, after all non-bodies come together, then it is given a name called what? Body. So then it seems as though body is only the name. All these parts are real. Parts, because the parts are the ones who constitute and come together to prepare the body. Now, each part, so then you say, okay, now hand is more real. Okay, so again I can do the same with hand. Is water hand? No. Is blood hand? No. The muscles hand? No. The nerves hand? No. Nails hand? No. Fingers hand? No. So now, not only the body is made up of non-bodies, the one part which is hand is also made up of non-hand. So that means body is nothing but an assemblage. Then if you say one part which is blood, what is blood? If you read your blood report, how many different things are there in your blood, you don't even know. Only you check, generally we check what? Hemoglobin, if you are diabetic then your sugar level. But there is a whole big report which is constituting your blood, that itself, blood is made up of non-blood. Every part is an assemblage of many, many, many different things. And how far does it go? Cells, then atoms, particles, sorry?
You end up with space.
Absolutely. So you actually go on and on and on. So therefore, this body itself is hundreds of things, and each one you know very well you are not. If I ask you a question, are you water? Doesn't take you long to answer no. I ask you, are you blood? It doesn't take long to answer no. Every cell in your body is something which is only a visitor for a while. Every day you have some cells going and new cells coming. So therefore, a body is this complex mechanism which is made up of all these different things, atoms which organize themselves to make molecules, cells, cells organize themselves to make organs, organs organize themselves to make one whole digestive system organizes itself and coordinates with respiratory system. The whole thing is an assemblage. A very sophisticated assemblage, a very well programmed assemblage. But is it I? Not really. So therefore, this I am the body is my conclusion. And the minute I make that conclusion, I become what? Mortal. I can't escape mortality. And our whole attempt is to what? Become immortal. That's why that need to become immortal is so innate. That's why I can't handle old age. Everybody does hundreds of plastic surgeries. I'm going to dye my hair tomorrow. So that means nobody can handle. If I don't dye, people remind me, hey, your hair is becoming grey. So therefore, the identification with the body that we have is very intimate. And that, as long as you keep the identification, not only you become mortal, you become small. And how much space do you occupy in the universe? The body occupies what space in the universe? Insignificant. So this mistake that we make about nature of I is not a simple mistake. It costs us a lot. So this is the first thing that Lord Krishna says, that there is a confusion. Now, the second part of this whole I am not the body, people take it as, they change the vocabulary. And they say this body is going, the body is sitting, the body is drinking, because now I have learned Vedanta and I have understood I am not the body. You don't need to do that. People will think you've gone bonkers, right? So that means all you need to understand is, one thing is, you, among all the different bodies, you do have special relationship with one body. That is a fact. Just among all the different cars, you have a special relationship with one car. Or among all the different houses, you have special relationship with one house. Correct? That's not a problem. But because you have a special relationship with it, you become that is a problem. It is the inability to discriminate between what is I, Atma, and what is Anatma, not Atma. That is the problem. That you have special relationship with one body is a fact, and you don't need to deny it. The second thing is also extremely important. Just because you are not the body doesn't mean you have to be indifferent to the body. Some people then say, oh, I'm not the body, so then, just whatever the body is, whatever it is. There is a very nice verse. See, the Upanishads are very clever, because they know every statement you make, you will create your own picture of reality, which is not in keeping with what they want to convey. So they tell you this reality in different ways to make you see the relationship properly. So in Kathopanishad, they give an analogy. What is the analogy? That there is an analogy of a chariot. The chariot is equated to physical body. And the 5 horses are what? the senses. Then the rain is the mind, and the charioteer is the buddhi. And this chariot is given to you to what? And who's the owner of the chariot? Who's the owner of the chariot? You, the jiva, the individual, is the owner of the chariot. Now, you have to go and to the final destination. What is the destination? Moksha. So that means this body is extremely useful for you to what? Get moksha. So therefore, you can't be indifferent to it. Even though you are not the body, it's a vehicle through which, that's where the mind rests. And in the mind, there is ignorance. And the mind has to solve this problem of ignorance. So that's why it becomes an important vehicle through which you gain moksha. So what does it mean? It means even if you understand I'm not the body, it doesn't mean that you become indifferent to the body. You take care of it. Because if the chariot is faulty, if the chariot is not able to go, what happens? Will you reach the destination? Sit in the class and you have all the aches. Your mind will be only on your aches. So therefore, Vedanta is not giving you an advice by saying, oh, be indifferent to the body, don't take care of the body, you're not the body, don't even just take cognizance of the body. It is just showing you the statement of fact. It's making a statement of fact. The relationship that you have with your body and the nature of mistake that we make. I have a body, true. Right now, I have special relationship with one body, true. I am the body, not true. And this body is given to me to what? Complete my journey. This is why, especially a human body is blessed body. Why is human body supposed to be a blessed body? Not because we have a good time, as you were saying, life is, for a human being, there is a lot more suffering at times than a normal bird who is just flying, a normal fish who is just swimming. If there is suffering, why is human body a blessing?
Yes, we have free will.
Super. We have free will. And not only we have free will, but how does free will help? Why is it a blessing? It's true that we have free will. It's true.
We can
come to Vedanta and you go.
Exactly. The free will. So that means the challenge is at times what? It gives us some triggering points, like for Arjuna. And those triggering points, if we use our free will properly and if we use our buddhi properly, then what happens is it can take you to the solution of the problem. You can come to Vedanta. As a human being, that's why it is considered a privilege to have a human body. So this is why, see, in India, we have a special relationship with one body. People, when I went to the US, they used to ask me, why do people put this tika? And I didn't know exactly what. But now, after studying Vedanta, I understand. And that is, your body is a temple where Ishvara or Atma is. So therefore, you need to respect this body. So the first level of Vedanta teaching is, oh, you are not the body, and as those start flying with this awareness and be indifferent to body. This is not traditional Vedanta. Traditional Vedanta means that you are a discerning human being, you understand the relationship with that, but the body, that just because you are not the body doesn't mean that you don't take care of it, that you don't respect it, that you don't actually make use of it properly. This is the asset that is given to you, which can enable you to participate in the world and also can lead you to moksha. So there is a healthy relationship that you have with this body. Now, if you are the body, if you are not the body, then who are you? The second place where we have our strong sense of I is where?
Right.
In the mind. Now, if you were the mind, then also Lord Krishna's statement would not be true, that there was never a time that you were not, and there was never a time you will not be. Why? Because the mind is connected to the body, and as long as the body is, the mind is. So therefore, if Lord Krishna's words are true, then you are also not the mind. Why not? Why are you not the mind? The mind is changing. The mind is nothing but series of thoughts. And each thought, now understand what your relationship with the thought is. Are you the thought? When you make a statement, very often we make a statement. In your mind, if you feel something upsets you, then what happens? You say, I'm upset. Something pleases you, I'm happy. So that means your I is totally connected to whatever the thought of the mind is. So whatever that present thought is, that is what in your understanding I is. What Vedanta makes you see is the fact that what is your relationship with the mind. Imagine now you have a thought. What is the thought that you have now?
Great teaching.
Yeah, so, okay, the thought, oh, my teaching. Okay, did you exist before this thought or not? Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, will you exist after this thought or not?
Yeah.
You will. So that means, and the thought while it is there, do you exist or not? Yes. So that means, you existed before the thought came. You existed while the thought is there. You existed after the thought is gone. And what has happened is, whatever the thought was, did it stick to your eye? Did it? No. Why not? Because if it got stuck to you, what will happen is, there is a very nice method in Taittiriya Upanishad. They show it. This is Adi Shankaracharya. Brilliant. Simple examples, but they tell a lot. He says, think of a tree. You think of a tree. Then he says, now think of a cow. You think of a cow. Is this tree still remaining? Not an ounce of the tree is remaining. If the tree remained and then you thought of a cow, what will happen? Your tree and it will get superimposed with your cow. Two things together. Then you think of a horse. Then what will happen? The tree will remain, the horse will superimpose, and then what? The cow is still there. If I took on the attribute of thoughts, if thoughts got stuck to the I, then right now you will be seeing everything that you have seen before. All at the same time, because everything got stuck. Is it true? Right now, when you are listening to these words, hopefully these words are what with million other things that you have thought of. that shows something very significant. That not only you existed before the thought came, not only you existed while the thought is there, not only you existed after the thought is gone, but the thought didn't get stuck to you at all. The quality of that thought did not stick to you. That's why right now, if I ask you, what did you, Shan, what did you think 1 hour ago? Tell me, exactly 1 hour ago. I have no idea. Okay, 1 hour ago is too far. 5 minutes ago. No idea. Okay, 3 minutes ago. No idea. So that means thought by its nature, please understand, doesn't get stuck. Neither you are the thought, nor the nature of the thought gets stuck to you. But in our understanding of ourselves, we totally define ourselves by what? The nature of thought that you have right now. Your whole self-identity is totally and so intimately connected to what you're thinking now. So that means Lord Krishna says this is a mistake. Ignorance. Ignorance can do the job which is impossible. So now, this mind and its thoughts, that you may think that they are not just, why if it is this logic, hopefully is not difficult. Is it difficult, this logic? No. Does it then mean that you will now walk out of the class and say, hey, I'm not, It is not that easy, because this mind, which is nothing but thoughts, is not just random thoughts, it's organized in an extremely sophisticated manner. So these thoughts that we say constitute of mind are not just random thoughts coming and going. They have very important functions. What are the functions? What are the different functions of the mind which are nothing but thoughts? These thoughts which come and go, they perform 4 major functions. Memory is called chittam in Sanskrit.
Imagination.
Okay, so imagination is a very interesting one. That's true. So that means an imagination is you postulate, right?
Future, yeah.
You postulate future. And that may or may not be true, but you postulate. That is your capacity to project, right? Then what else?
Decision making?
Super. Decision making in Sanskrit is called buddhi. There is a faculty which is what when situation presents itself, right? You have different options, and then you have a decision making capacity. This is called buddhi. So one of the functions, very important functions of the mind is buddhi. And that buddhi requires what? How do you make decisions when different options are presented?
Doubting.
You use,
Doubts?
So first there are doubts, and then there is decision making. So the doubting mind is what we call sankalpa vikalpatmikaha manaha. So that function of the mind is called manas. The doubting. Should I do this or should I do that? That is manas. The second faculty is buddhi, decision making. Nishchayatmika buddhi. So manas, buddhi. Then the third is chittam. Chittam is memory. And what is the fourth function of the mind?
Ego.
Wonderful. So that means in Sanskrit it is called ahankara. Now this ahankara, when you use, it's true that in English it translates as ego, but there is a little bit difference in how you understand ego, right? So generally when you use the word ego, what does it sound like to you? It sounds like a positive, negative, neutral. What kind of word is it?
Depends who you ask. Ask Trump and he will say.
Somebody has ego. How does it sound? Great. Okay. So here, generally we use the word ego in English, I think. I don't know, I'm not a native speaker of English. But it seems to me as though ego has a negative connotation, right? So that means like what? Destroy ego, like that, right? So that means in Sanskrit, we don't use the word ahankara in a negative way. We talk about it as a function of the mind.
That's wise.
That's wise.
You don't.
So what it means is, see what is the definition of ahankara? The definition of ahankara is, now imagine, you have doubts, this or this. Then you have decision making, then where you say this. And then memory. You use all the past experiences and all to assess the situation and then you make the decision, right? Now in all of this, right, there is this whole, everything gets connected to I. So for example, when you see something, there is a frame that is happening which makes you see that, for example. But there is a mind which is a function of the mind which tells you, I am seeing it. So that means it is an I-related thought which relates all other activities that are taking place, all other functions that are taking place in the mind to I. This is called ahankara. Because in everything, your I gets connected. Therefore, why the word ahankara? It is I, but it is kara. It is not your real I, it gives you what? As a sense of I. So ahankara is the sense of I, which is a function of the mind. What it means is, now that sense of I that we have is, yesterday as I was saying, creates a story of what's happening to me, what the world is. So everything gets related to this I. I creates a story about I am. What is the nature of I am? That I am can create a story which is I'm great, like Trump, or it can create a story I'm nobody. But that I sense everybody has, because it's a function of the mind. So this is why this manas, which is what we call sankalpa vikalpatmikaha manaha, the one which is giving doubts, also is a seat where emotions are. That also is looked upon as a seat of emotion. So that means when you see a child crying, if you are a normally healthy person, what will happen? You will not say, oh, I'm indifferent, I'm not the mind. You will not do that. You will go and pick up the child. That is the function of the mind. The mind is programmed. Or when somebody was saying that they were taking a walk and a big dog, I think Hannah was saying, was really harming the small dog. What is your first reaction? You try to separate it. So that means it triggers emotions, right? That hey, this is it disturbs you and then you act. So this is what we call the seat of emotion. And that seat of emotion is something which is healthy, because if you lost that capacity, what will happen? You will be unable to distinguish between different situations. It is an extremely important function of the mind. But what happens is, whatever that emotion is, what happens, you say, I am sad. So that is what your I sense gets connected to that emotion that is existing in the mind at that given point in time. Then that emotion is replaced by some other emotion, then you say, I am that emotion. So that means one I sense changing emotions, everything gets imputed to I. But not only your emotions get imputed to I, your buddhi, which is what the decision-making capacity, which is also, the decision-making capacity also requires some analysis. So it also includes analytical capacity, the intellect. Because decisions are made after weighing things. So that intellect is also another function of the mind, but not only we use that function of the mind, it gets attributed to I. So for example, if your decision making is good or your thinking capacity is good, what you tell yourself is, I am intelligent. It's a faculty which is your buddhi, which is working well, but what is your conclusion? I am intelligent. So the buddhi gets connected to what? Your ahankara, I sensed. Then you have chittam. What is chittam? Memory. The memory is of two types. One is what we call conscious memory. Now imagine, would you be able to conduct anything without memory? Actually nothing. You won't be able to come here in the first place if you didn't have memory. So therefore, this memory is an extremely important function of the mind. Therefore, in the traditional Vedanta, we don't say live in the present, because your present is very intimately connected to the past. You can't erase it. And you should not even try to erase it, because that's what gives you all the knowledge that you have of language. If you didn't have memory, the language that you'll never be able to learn anything, because the previous sentence that you say, it'll be forgotten. So therefore, memory is an important function. But that memory that is an important function, what happens is your I gets connected to it. What is the I connection? You say, when I was 15 years old, I did it. Or yesterday I did this. So that means I sense. This is why your I sense becomes what? Sometimes your mind is functioning and it's working with emotions. Sometimes you're using your cognitive capacity and decision-making capacity. Sometimes it is a memory which is invoked. But in all these things which come and go, there is one entity to which everything gets attributed, and that becomes your sense of I. Ahankara.
Is that also what creates the impression of separation?
Yes. So that means that sense of I is then, it creates a story. And that creates a story of what is going on and what is happening to me, what is my place in it. And that gives us self-image that we have.
So if that would not be there, I couldn't even get this impression that I would be an I.
Yeah, exactly. So that means it is required. That I sense is actually required. Because I have that I sense, and then it is, I'm making that mistake, then there is a possibility of what? Knowing its true nature. If you didn't have this I sense, then there will not be limitation. And because there is no limitation, there is no search for solution. That I sense is a very integral part. That ahankara you need. You can't function without ahankara. So Vedanta is not about eliminating ahankara. Please understand. Vedanta is all about understanding ahankara as one of the functions of the mind, and you being much more than that. That is Vedanta.
Was ahankara also what allows you to lead your body and your mind, and
Yeah.
otherwise how do you
Otherwise, how do you exactly?
make choices and
Absolutely. Right? That when situations arises, no, I have to decide that. Right? You don't say, oh, this body will decide. You don't say
It
that.
gives you ownership.
It gives you a sense of ownership.
Sense of ownership.
But that sense of ownership is what they call, there is a place where we call, there is a doership and enjoyership. Karta, kartrutvam and bhoktutvam. This is a seat of ahankara. It gives you that sense of, I'm making the decision, this is what I have to do. It makes you do planning. So it actually is the entity which runs the show.
It's not a thought.
Sorry?
It's not a
It is a thought, but it is a
Ahankara is a
series.
thought.
It is a series of thought. They keep changing, right? Because see, for example, there is a thought which is sadness, right? So now what happens is, I say I am sad. Sadness is thought, then there is a simultaneous thought which is what I am sad. Then it is replaced with I am happiness, then what? I am happy. So what happens is, the happiness changes from sadness, but the I remains constant. I am sad, I am happy, I am jealous. So I remains constant. That's why even though it is series of thought, it gets solidity. Because it is as though constant, in all thoughts.
It has to be the primary or basic thought
It is
for three of thoughts, and this thought has to be the basic thought.
So
Otherwise, this tree will not grow up.
So that means that's why in one day your eye sense can change how many times? Tell me. Huh?
Many.
Countless times. But it seems like constant to you because it's always that I is always there.
I the first.
So that's why it gives that whole, why is it that it gives you, there's such a strong entity there, even though it is a thought, it's not just kind of a passing thought, it is behind each thought. Every thought gets connected to this I sense. And that's why it gives it a very, as though a solid identity,
Is Ahankara the center of Jiva? The middle of, or the center of
We have not yet talked about what exactly Jiva is. So I will not use some other term because I first need to define what Jiva is. Then only I can, it's not right because otherwise all Vedanta becomes all over the place where we use terms without knowing their meaning. So I will answer that question a little bit later. But do you understand what Ahankara is? Is it clear to you or not? Or should I re-explain?
So is there Ahankara in a dog?
So yeah, that's a good question. So that means there is every entity, every living being has some sense of Ahankara. They all have. So this is also explained in Shankara Bhashyam in Taittiriya Upanishad. What he says is, even the cow has eye sense. How? He says, you go to a cow with a nice piece of grass and smile at the cow, what will the cow do? It will keep running to you. It will come running to you. But if you go with a stick and raise your hand, what will a cow do? Run away. So that means even the cow has eye sense. Then, what is the difference between a cow's eye sense and a human being's eye sense? The cow has a basic, the eye sense is there, but it's not so well developed to do advanced reasoning and connect it to I sense. So it works with the data which are perception and simple inference. Your I sense is connected to the data which comes from perception and simple inferences. Whereas a human being's I sense works with what? Complex data gathering and what? Complex inferences, very sometimes imaginations, everything come together to become what? That which creates your self-image.
But isn't the difference then the buddhi, how the buddhi works?
So that's why the buddhi, because see, your buddhi also gets connected to your I, no?
And the I sense is formed by conditioning in childhood. Is correct?
I mean, part of it is, of course, what is conditioned in the childhood, but as you grow, you also take initiatives, and depending upon the type of initiatives
It can be
that
changed.
you take,
It can
and
be
it can
changed, but it's
change.
formed
Yes.
formed by conditioning in childhood. First,
Yes.
ahankara.
Yeah, so okay, that's a good question. According to the modern psychology, your I sense is built by your early experiences. I think first 4 or 5 years, what happens to you and what you see as a child has a lot to do with how you feel about yourself. But Vedanta takes it slightly further, and it talks about the samskaras with which we come. So what does that mean? It means that, now imagine that I was a very good cricket player in the previous life. Then this life I may already come with what? Some skills in cricket which others may not have. So that means my mind's capacity to see the ball, to play the technique is all kind of little bit stored somewhere. This is what we call samskaras. So that means we don't all come with exactly the clean slate. We come with certain orientations. And this, by the way, we give it a name called samskar. That is the traditional name. That's why every mind is different. There is, even though the overall program of every human mind is the same, there are no two minds which are exactly the same. And we don't all start at the same 0 point. We start with certain impressions already, which come from past life. But this constitutes your I. But the thing is, it is constantly changing, and when you intervene correctly, you can also change a lot your sense of I.
And that's the difference between like a dog and a human, right? Like
Yes.
the awareness
Exactly.
that we can understand we have
Right.
always.
Exactly.
Humans.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is why the I sense. Now, what is the whole of psychology is all related to what? Improving this I sense and thinking that this I sense is I. What Vedanta says is, this I sense is only the function of the mind.
But Vedanta is using the function, like in psychology, like in cognitive
Exactly.
psychology.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why is Vedanta using this function?
Because
Only, where is the ignorance?
in the mind.
In the mind. And where can the solution be?
In the mind.
In the mind.
Yeah.
That's why we say, hey, I'm not, the mind is not a simple thing. You need to use your mind. And you not only need to use your mind, you have to make your mind cultivated, like how I was saying yesterday, in order to understand all the subtleties of Vedanta. So if you use this Vedanta in a way, oh, I'm not the mind, so forget the mind, that is a big disaster. That's why this analogy of this chariot, that even though you're not the body, the chariot, or you're not the charioteer, but you still need it in order to get there, to moksha. So even though you're not the mind, you need a highly cultivated mind to order to understand the nature of I. So if you use the Vedanta teaching at the first level and start telling I'm not the mind, I'm not the mind, you're actually not making enough effort to prepare the mind and make it ready for the knowledge, the real knowledge. That's why these are the assets that are given to you, and you have to learn how to use it well. Through this is the solution. The ignorance cannot, the only place where ignorance can go is the mind. That's why you need a highly discerning mind. So therefore, these four are the faculties of the mind. But they are constantly changing, and you exist what as whether you have a poor self-image or you have a very high self-image or you have a healthy self-image, no matter what self-image you have, that is constantly in a flux. It can change from one time to the other, but who you are is even independent of that. That's where Vedanta. So then, if you're not the body and you're not the mind, and all you thought all these years is that is what I am, then the next question is, then who are you? So, the teaching is that you are what? Sat Chit Ananda Atma. These are big words. Sat Chit Ananda Atma. Wow, what does it mean? What it means is Chit. Chit is a nice word. It makes you think about, Vedanta tells you, first, I am, see, you're not the body, you're not the mind, then you can conclude everything that I thought I'm not, so that means I'm nothing, which is what we call shunya. Shunya means nothing. What Vedanta says is, hey, can you say I don't exist? There is one thing that everybody knows, and that is what I am. Which is what we call I am is Swataha Siddha. What is Swataha Siddha? It is self-evident. What does self-evident mean? It means, if I ask you a question, is this bottle there or not? You will say what? Yes. What is the color of this bottle? Green. Right. Now, how did you answer this question? Wonderful. You used your eyes, which is what? A sense organ. And the eyes sent the message to the mind, and the mind, what? Said, oh, she has seen the bottle before, so now she says what? She retrieves this information from her memory. It's a complex thing.
And it's tricky because if you ask what kind of color is inside, like the water, you could say it's green.
Exactly, that's where we make a mistake.
Yeah.
Because our perception can give us wrong data.
Yeah.
Wonderful. But right now,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
look at that's true. But let's look at, that's true. But this answer she gave, she could not have given this answer without using her eyes, and the eyes sending signals to her brain, the brain processing it and then saying it is. Right? Now, if I ask you, are you there or not? What will you say? Yes. Did you use your eyes to answer this question? Did you use your ears? Did you use your sense of smell, touch? You didn't need to use any of your sense organs to answer my question. That means it is not indriya pratyaksha. It is not a sense perception. It is something which is what we call swataha siddha. Swataha siddha means it is self-evident. For existence of everything else, you need to use your sense organs. There is only one entity in this whole universe which you can say that it exists without using your sense organs. Swataha siddha. So that means Vedanta does not need to tell you that I, Atma, is. You already know I am. What is then why do you need Vedanta? Because your I am is got drowned in what? The nature of the body and the nature of mind. Your whole I was got connected to the body and mind. And as a result, you started living like what? This little tiny bit entity struggling in life. What is Vedanta? A means of knowledge. It is a means of knowledge to make you see clearly the relationship of what? The body and mind to the actual I. So therefore, Vedanta, where you were stuck in the body and mind, so first it says this is not what you are. This method is called neti neti. Na iti, na iti. Which is a very important method, because if you start immediately speaking about Atma, what will happen? If I start just talking about Atma is limitless and all, and you think that I am the body or I am the mind, what will you think? My mind is limitless. And that will be a disaster. Because mind, even though it is programmed to do so many things, it is not limitless. There is so much ignorance in the mind. In fact, Swamiji says, there are so many things that you don't know. You go to, I think there is even Witzenhausen library you go. Which is not one of the biggest libraries. And you look at the books. Just look at the books. And the knowledge which is there in these books. How much you know? Okay, take one book. Forget all the books. Take one book. Do you know the book? So then if you start thinking that mind is limitless, then you are on a trip. That's why Vedanta has to be taught properly. If it is not taught properly, it can create so many misconceptions. And you start flying with this idea of limitlessness and unconnected to reality.
It's causing insanity.
That will cause insanity. This is why this method, the traditional Vedanta and the method, you have to see the importance of that. It is the whole tradition of leading you to the reality. And you have to follow the tradition. Otherwise it is irresponsible, it can create insanity. It can create notions which will lead to madness. So therefore, that's why you first have to say, this is not what I am. Then what remains as a self-evident I, and that we actually don't quite know what it is, this is where Vedanta says, there is one thing which remains when you say, I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, and that is Chit. What is Chit? Chit means, there are two English words that both my teacher used. One is awareness And the other one he used to use sometimes is consciousness. Now, the word conscious, see, both of these words have a limitation. You have to understand. Because we use these words in a certain sense. When I use the word consciousness, when we use, generally how do we use it?
I'm awake and conscious.
Exactly. That's the sense in which I use the word consciousness. And he's unconscious now. What does it mean? That is the meaning, the normal meaning of that word. When I use the word awareness, what is the meaning in which we use this word? How do we generally use the word awareness? He's very aware of social issues. He has awareness about environment, the ecology.
Knowledgeable, we use it.
We use it in the sense of the person is aware of things, right? When Vedanta uses this word, he's not using the word in that traditional sense. It is using the word in a different way. This is why it is said what? Sat Chit Ananda Satyam Dhanam Anantam. He's using the word in the sense that there is one thing which makes you aware of changing conditions of the body. If it was not there, you will not know about the different conditions of the body. It is one thing because of which you come to know the changing mind. That is what we call Chit. Chit, does it take on the attributes of the body? No. Does it take on the attribute of the mind, and the different thoughts of mind? No. Does it take on the attribute of anything else that exists in the world? No.
Therefore, it is existing in deep sleep.
It is also existing in deep sleep because your experiences are undergoing change. In the waking, the mind is there. In the dream, the mind, a certain aspect of the mind is awake and it is creating and projecting the world, and that awareness is because of which you are able to see the dream world. And in the deep sleep, the mind is totally resolved. That's why you don't even have a thought, oh, I'm sleeping well now. Mind is resolved, but the awareness is there. In Mundaka Upanishad, it is said, the way Chit is described is Pratibodha Viditam Matam. What does it mean? It means that which is in and through every experience that you have, without which no experience is possible. But being without it, no experience is possible, but the experience, it doesn't get stuck to it. Chit. Chit Swarupa. So therefore, now, if I understand that I am this Chit Swarupa, and if you understand you are that Chit Swarupa and not body and mind, and if he understands he is Chit Swarupa, which is not his body and mind. So that means now the next question is, how many Chit are there?
Only one.
Wonderful. Why?
It's because it's like the root of existence. It's one substance.
There is only one thing. But that's true. Your answer is right. So I was doing a class in Bombay, and I asked this question, and I said that so if neither you are the body and mind, nor I am the body and we are all Chit Swarupa. I said, how many Chits are there? Husband said, as many bodies there are that many chits. And the wife said, only one. And who was right? Wife. In this case, not always.
Well, life is always right. Gives you peace.
So that means, how do you come to this conclusion logically? What you say is right, it's intuitive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That it is something which is the most fundamental and the most basic, and there is not many. How do you come to this? Can you, so what it says is, anything that we know, right, is always through the perception, right, and perception-based inference. This existence of Atma, which is awareness, which is just one, that is the knowledge which is given by Pramana. Pramana means this, Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita are means of knowledge, which makes you see the nature of Atma, the true nature of Atma. And if you were to contradict what it, see, you need not accept what it says, right? Why should you accept what Vedanta is saying or what Gita is saying?
One,
You can, go ahead.
one reason could be that it's counterintuitive. So that means if you have the idea of following your experience, observing nature, like in the first philosophers maybe they did, you misguided. You just believe the sun is it's turning around the earth and all this stuff. So
Exactly. So that means your perception can be counterintuitive. But here, the thing is, if Vedanta tried to contradict what Vedanta is saying, this is the method. So that means Vedanta is saying there is only one consciousness. That's why the Chit is Anantam. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. The Chit has no boundaries. The Chit is not many. It's only one. Now, you try to contradict what Vedanta is saying. If you were to show that there are two awarenesses, how would you show that there are two awarenesses?
You have to distinguish.
Exactly. And how would you distinguish between awarenesses? By the only method through which you can distinguish between awareness is what? Giving different attributes to awareness.
Making them into an object.
Exactly.
yeah.
The minute you make awareness into an attribute, give it attribute, you will make it into an object. Objects are many, they have many different attributes. And in fact, what we said is that this is an object, it is not, awareness is not an object, it's a subject. So that means I cannot, because every attribute that is there, which is blackness, fat, whatever, it belongs to the body. The sadness, happiness, whatever, everything belongs to the mind. If you take out all this from awareness, can you give any attribute to this awareness where you can say yours is blue awareness and mine is a green awareness, therefore your awareness is different from mine? If you were to make a statement, if you were to show that awarenesses are two, you have to show me the attribute of awareness, which distinguishes your awareness from my awareness. But what distinguishes us is our body, which you are not. What distinguishes us is our mind, that also you are not. If you put your eye in its right place, which is in awareness, there is no distinguishing factor.
But still, without the Shastra,
Without the
we
Shastra, you
wouldn't be able
wouldn't
to
know.
prove it.
No.
So sitting under,
So,
under the body tree is not
It is not, that's why I say it's Pramana. Because the only faculty, the faculty with which we can come to know is through perception and perception-based influence. That's why Shastra is a pramana. Shastra says it. You can't come to know it because the only way, the method through which we come to know it is through, this is the only way which is given to us. Perception and perception-based influence. And because awareness is not an object, you can never come to know it. Shastra tells you that. But you have no, if what Shastra says is right, then you have no way to contradict what Shastra says. It remains uncontradicted. So that's a very important point. Shastra is a pramana. Otherwise you don't need Shastra. Why should you, if you yourself can figure it out, you don't need to read Gita. And that's why it's a very important point that Matthias made, that if you sat under a Bodhi tree to know the nature of Atma, there was no way.
Poor Buddha. All this effort.
So therefore, because it's not possible, right? So therefore, this is pramana, pramanajanya. That's why Gita, we look upon Gita as a book which reveals the nature of Atma. Upanishad, same, which gives you clear knowledge about the nature of Atma, which is otherwise not available.
Sorry, what is pramana?
Pramana means a means of knowledge. I will, what is the time? 6:15.
20 minutes here.
Oh, we still have 20 minutes. Okay, let me just a little bit go into, should I or should I follow this? But it's nice to know. Some things are important, so I have to get into it. Pramana is a Sanskrit word. It means means of knowledge, right? So now, as I asked, what is this, right? And somebody said, this is a bottle. So what is the means of knowledge? You came to know that there is a bottle, and what was the means of knowledge? Your eyes, right? Now, your eyes, only your eyes can do the job of seeing the form. It is irreplaceable. What does it mean? You cannot use your ears to know whether the bottle exists or not. You cannot use your perception. You need to use your eyes to see the form. This is called pramana.
Or touch.
Huh?
Touch maybe as well, if you're blind.
So if you're blind and but you may still, you may be able to figure out, but you will still not do the job of seeing this. You can figure out
you perceive it somehow.
You can somehow. But that means that for anything that you want to know, you need to use an appropriate means of knowledge. It is not interchangeable. What does it mean? That if you want to hear the sound, you cannot use your nose. Only your ears will do the job. If you want to taste, you can't put it here and taste it. Only your tongue will do the job. This is what we call means of knowledge. What does it mean? That will give you knowledge of something which nothing else can give. So when I make the statement that only your ears can hear, am I being fanatic? No. I'm not being fanatic because really that is true, only the ears can hear. It is irreplaceable. Now, so the means of knowledge that we have with us, anything that we know, we first use what? Perception. Through our 5 sense organs. The data comes from 5 sense organs. Now, that is what we call in Sanskrit pratyaksha pramana. Pratyaksha pramana means the perception, sensory perception. Now, everything that we know, is not only perception, because sometimes the so many things we know, which is perception is required, but there is an additional function which is required. For example, when you are driving a car on a highway in Germany, the cars go so fast. And I think there is hardly any speed limit here. So the cars go fast and you're going at a high speed, and the car in front of you, you see the red light during the daytime. What do? You brake. What was the perception? The perception was of the red light, but what was the inference? You used inference. What did you infer?
Danger.
That the person is slowing down, so the person is braking. So now if I want to avoid an accident, what do? I also need to slow down, so you press the brake. This is, the perception is of red light, the inference is what? The person is slowing down.
But it's conditioned. So it's
So
conditioned.
that means, it is conditioned, but it goes,
Yeah.
most of the time, so many things are done based on inference, and it's not wrong,
Yeah, that's true.
right?
Yeah.
Now, but it's true, sometimes your inference can go wrong. How can your inference go wrong? Generally, what you relate. You say, when, for example, you say that when the person has tears, the person is sad. That's your inference. The perception is what? Tears, and the inference is what? The person is sad. Is it always going to give you the right knowledge? No.
He's
Why?
cutting onions.
Because at times you can be cutting onions and then there are tears. So that means the inference we make is not tight enough. That's why sometimes, very often, we make wrong inferences and we gain what? Wrong knowledge. In fact, wrong knowledge is not the word. We don't understand things. There is no wrong knowledge.
Fake knowledge.
So therefore, what happens is, if you want to use inference in its right way to gain the knowledge, you have to make your inference what? Tight. This is called, in English, is called invariable concomitance. What is invariable concomitance? Your inference is going to be true when there is what? Whenever this is going to happen. Then your inference is going to be right. But if there is one deviation, then what will happen is you could be right or you could be wrong. So that means you can have tears not only out of sadness, but because you are cutting onions, or you are what?
Joyous.
You are happy. So there are different reasons why you can have tears. So that means if you made an inference that because this person has tear, the person is sad, it could be right or it could be wrong. Because there is no invariable concomitance. What is invariable concomitance? That every time there is tear, there has to be sadness. If that was the case, your inference will be what? Right. So therefore, we use not only perception, but we also use inference to know things. But the inference is based on perception. The perception data, and then we use some reasoning. We use one-step reason, or we use multiple step reason. Like in science, you come to know how we think about how old is the universe. It's not just simple perception, it is what? Too much of mathematics, a lot of things need to be worked out in order to estimate that. So this is, in Sanskrit, perception is called pratyaksha. The inference is called anumana. And more than one step inference is called arthapatti. This is how we know things in the world. All our discoveries, medical, science, everything, economics, psychology, everything is based on what? Perception and perception-based inference, whether it is one-step inference or it is multiple-step inference. Now, through this method, can you know the nature of Atma? Not really. Why not?
Because it's not an object.
Exactly. It is not an object. So that means everything that we have within our capacity to know things, to make all these amazing scientific discoveries is not available to know the nature of Atma.
But that means that science reached a certain border, let's say like Higgs boson stuff, and so that it's not possible to go further because you reach the realm of subjectivity, let's say.
Exactly. So that means you use, because every scientific discovery is first based on perception, which is data, and then very sophisticated inference, very tight inference. So that's why they are pretty good. But it is not adequate to know the nature of Atma. Because Atma, why is it not adequate? Because Atma is not an object. This is why our teacher used to say, generally you think you're praising Vedas by saying, oh, Veda is very scientific. He said, hey, Veda is not scientific. The subject matter of Veda is something which science cannot reach by definition. Because science can only work within perception and perception-based inference. This is giving you knowledge of Atma, which is not within that purview. That's why you need Veda. You can't just figure it out yourself. But if Veda is a pramana, then what will happen is, the person who's teaching Veda is very easy. Because you say, oh, it's a pramana, no other means of knowledge can reach it. So that means I can get away with any story.
It's not provable, let's say.
But the second condition for a valid means of knowledge is, in order for it to be valid, it cannot be contradicted by other pramana. That's why Vedanta becomes vigorous. If what it says is true, then you have no logic to prove that it is wrong. That's why what Vedanta says has strength. As Matthias was saying, I can talk to anybody.
Veda also proves that it is right by showing examples who went away.
Exactly, and it's leading. And not only it makes the statement, it has a highly sophisticated methodology to make you see this reality. That's why it is powerful. So this is what we mean by a means of knowledge. That's why we have a certain reverential attitude towards these books. Because they have key to the nature of I, which is the only solution to our search for freedom. So now, if it is Chit Swarupa and I have no, so that means it's one, because I have no logic to contradict what Vedanta or what Gita is saying. Because if I had a logic where I could show that awareness has attributes, then what Veda says is not right. And this is how also you have to understand Adi Shankaracharya was. He says, if 1,000 of Vedas say one thing, but if it is contradicted by logic, I have to reject what Vedas say. That is the mind with which you have to approach. What it says, you have to really see how uncontradictable it is. And that knowledge becomes firm. Otherwise, it just becomes like a loose belief system. The teacher says something and you just swallow it. that's why this methodology is a very powerful methodology. You can't skip it. Now, so this awareness is what now you understood, that it has no boundaries. It has no boundaries, it is all-pervading awareness, which seems to be what? Confined to the body. Like how the space seems to be confined to the cup. I call it what? Cup space. Is this really a separate cup space? How many spaces are there? Then you have that bottle, there is a bottle space, then there is a room space, then there is outside space. How many spaces are there? How many? One. If there is only one, why do we say cup space, room space, outside space, bottle space? Why? The presence of the cup as though what? Gives it a location. The bottle space as though becomes different from what? The cup space. But in reality, there is only one undivided space. This gives an optical illusion that Einstein was talking about. Gives an optical illusion, your perception can misguide you. It seems as though the space is confined. But in reality, it is not confined at all. There is only one space and the cup exists in space. The space doesn't get confined by the space. So the perception gives you an illusion.
Which is very practical. Life.
It's very practical for practical life, but when you're thinking about reality, then it requires a correction. This doesn't deny it. This is why you have to be, that's what I said. The body and mind, not I, is a very tricky thing. It is not, it's not like, yeah, here this is just kind of, it's not. It's there, empirically true. That's why in Sanskrit, we don't call it actually an illusion, we call it Vyavaharika. It is empirically true. But it's not absolutely true, but empirically true.
Like this room space where
Like
we
room
are
space,
all. It is
empirically true.
Add 10 more people, it would be.
So, you can't just dismiss everything. All this we will see very clearly. You can't just dismiss everything as mithya, maya. These are all very loosely used words. Vedanta uses it in a very, very precise manner. We'll see all of that. In a very intricate manner. All these words are used to show you certain things. So therefore, now, up to now, we have come to which point? We have understood my nature is not as good as the body, not as good as the mind. The mind itself has what? 4 different functions, which is what? 4 main functions. There are other subsidiary functions. And one of the important functions is what? Ahankara, where everything that happens in the mind gets attributed to. But I'm not any of that. Then who am I? I'm awareness, because of which the different changing world is known, the changing body is known, the changing nature of the mind, and all the functions of the mind are known. And that awareness does not take on any attribute. Neither it takes on the attribute of what is happening in the world, nor it takes on the attribute of what is happening in the body, nor it takes on the attribute of anything that is happening in any function of the mind, including Ahankara. And that awareness is not my individual awareness, it is one. There's no boundaries, but it seems to be confined to bodies. This is how we conclude there are many eyes. In fact, there is only one eye. There is only one Atma. Now, the next question, so it may then seem to you now, oh, you say, now I understood Vedanta. So there is one awareness and then there is everything else. What is everything else? What does it include? Bodies, wonderful. Minds, then what? Mountains, rivers, planets, galaxies, sun, moon. So all these are what?
Objects.
Objects. And there is one I, which is what? Subject, and that is awareness. So you still have two things now. You are still stuck with two.
Dualism.
Subject and object.
Yeah.
So the next verse, Lord Krishna says, hey, there are no two. So you have to see how to what. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.